Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm just a little bit excited tonight. We are here with our first guest speaker of the National Dog Breeder Convention. It's going to be quite a week. But we are kicking off with somebody who is super special. Her name is Webb. She's a broadcaster. She is a nutritionist and a behaviourist. She helps people with dogs all of the time. And she's here today to give you some of her tips and advice on nutrition and environmental stressors. So I'm going to hand over to Anna. But before I do, I just want to say that Anna is a broadcaster, okay? So it's like super important that you guys are coming across in a really engaging and memorable way for her, because she spends a lot of her week hearing pretty rubbish stories about breeders and hearing about how we're all, you know, Cruella de Vil and all the rest of it. And she knows some really cool breeders, but I really need you guys to reaffirm and be really cool and be really engaging with her so that she can go away back to the BBC, everybody, are you all paying attention, and say, you know, how actually she's met a really cool group of people that are really passionate. And I'm talking about you guys who are really passionate about, you know, raising their dogs properly, raising their puppies properly, and making a difference. You know, that's what I want her to go away today feeling like she's got that in her mind. And I want you guys to go away having loads of cool new information, because Anna's got loads to share with you. So welcome, Anna. Thank you very much for being with us today. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks, Rebecca, for inviting me. You know, it's great. I love it, you know, because the thing is, yes, breeders do have to do the right thing, and it is really important, you know, but loads of people do get it right. And it does upset me that, you know, in a way, everyone gets tarred with being a puppy farmer and bringing people across in terrible conditions to, you know, sell them with third-party sales on the internet, because that isn't the case of everyone at all. So, you know, it's good to fly the flag for responsibility and doing things the right way.
Yes, that's definitely what we're all about. So yesterday, I know you guys saw me do a brief live when I was at Discover Dogs. I actually bumped into Anna. It wasn't an arranged meeting, but I was walking along and I saw this little toy terrier, and I thought, do you know what? I recognise that dog. And it was Mr. Binks, because Anna has a little toy terrier called Mr. Binks, and he was stood there in all this noise and all this hubbub, and he was just like totally chilled. He was like, I've so got this. I was like, yeah, so what? You know, probably one of the smallest dogs there. And he was like, yeah, I've got this nailed. And you know, that kind of environment actually must be really stressful for dogs, okay? Which kind of leads me on to us talking about the environmental stressors, which I know is something that is, like, you know, super important to you. So how was he? How did he get on after that?
Really well. I mean, you know, Mr. Binks is like a rehome. So I took him on when he was 2.5, and he has some health issues, actually. He's got a condition called Legg-Calvé-Perthes disease, which is the degenerative bone condition that affects the hips. So little Mr. Binks has only got one hip joint, actually. His left hip was removed at 9 months. So he had quite a traumatic start in life, lots of surgery, you know, and then all the rehabilitation. So his socialization was limited, all the rest of it. So I took him on at 2.5, and put it this way, he's now nearly 10, and he is a different dog, completely different dog. And he did handle yesterday well, and considering that no one had done that event for 2 years, you know, he hasn't been able like that for that amount of time. You know, he did so well, and we were a bit in the middle of everything on that stand, because I was helping my friend Toby Rose, who founded the Palm Dog, which is the only cinema award that's accredited to dogs. So we can, we get the Oscars, don't we, or the Grammys, and dogs get the Palm Dog. So it's tremendous, and I just love that because it's quirky, and it also shows all the levels, you know, that dogs affect us and contribute to our lives and our history and our culture. You know, where would we be without Lassie? you know.
Oh yeah, oh, lost and bored on a Saturday morning for sure.
You know, the world of dogs is so deep, and the way that they run parallel with us is so deep. But that's where epigenetics comes in a way, because dogs like us, we've evolved so closely over 30 odd thousand years. You know, we've breathed the same air, we've drunk the same water, we've eaten the same meats, you know, from back in the day in the caves right through pretty much to now. Except it's been, you know, in recent times when processed food, really, I suppose post-war, post the Second World War, that processed foods, you know, were experimented with, cans became more common, fresh food became less common, and we've entered this sort of epidemic, really, both human and dog, of eating a lot of processed foods. And epigenetics means the way things in the environment, whether it's the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the food that we eat, but also other aspects in our environment, like flame retardant chemicals, like air fresheners, like cleaning products, how all of these things impact on our immune system by basically invading us, coming into our cells, either by breathing things in, licking floors that might have just been cleaned with bleach or some other kind of very, a chemical cleaner. And so it goes into our system just like food goes into our system.
And is that what you would describe as an environmental stressor when we use the terminology? Because for some of the people that are with us tonight, Anna, wouldn't necessarily have come across that kind of terminology. So is that what it is in essence? Is the environmental stressors the chemicals that they would come in contact with?
Yeah, exactly. You know, things that aren't totally natural for a dog to eat or breathe. You know, basically, in a way, we're living in a toxic soup. You know, you read in the papers that more, you know, sewage has contaminated rivers, or there's been a leaking from some chemical factory, and loads of fish have died in the rivers. There was a piece about how flea treatments are actually getting into British rivers and killing fish and killing wildlife. So the dragonflies die, then there's nothing for the birds to eat. So we've got this whole knock-on effect. Yeah, fipronil, which is a typical flea treatment.
Flea treatment, yeah.
It was, everyone I'm sure is familiar with. Well, that was banned in farming several years ago. So the fact that the fipronil in some British rivers is 80% above the safety level.
Wow.
Quite a worrying thing. So you think, well, how does flea treatment get into rivers? Well, think about it. You've popped a spot-on treatment onto your dog and it's gone all over your hands. What do? Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Down the drain. And then, you know, all of that substance, because lots of it goes onto the coat, will rub off onto your cushions. What do? You wash the covers, it goes down the drain, and so on. And if you multiply this by the amount of dogs and cats that are living in the UK at the moment, that's a hell of a lot.
3.2 million extra. I was reading. So 3.2 million extra.
I know. So I was going to put Prudence, my naughty bull terrier.
It's okay. We're all dog lovers here. It's fine.
Yes, I'm on Zoom now. It's live, Prudence. It's not a podcast recording. It can be edited out. So environmental stresses are all these things that, you know, you might think are quite benign, you know, having a Febreze air freshener in the corner of your puppy room, for example, to, you know, take the smell out of...
Yeah, because puppies are stinky.
Puppies are stinky, you know, they do pee and poo a lot. They don't have, you know, the ability to control anything. Mum will clean up after them, of course, but there will be, particularly when they get to the weaning point and they're starting the little zoomies, and you might have a room sectioned off for them. You might have a large puppy pen, but either way, there will be little ploplets that come out. So you might think, oh, let's keep it all fresh. But think about it, you know, if you think that from these air freshener type products, there are these things called volatile organic compounds that ooze out from the chemicals, particularly when you put the central heating on. Now, I don't want to scaremonger people, and everyone's running around now and
turning the thermostat off.
Turning the thermostat off, but it's heat induced. So, and the thing is, these tiny minute particles are wafting around in the air, and We inhale them, dogs inhale them, but the problem is what happens is the dust then kind of falls onto the floor or onto cushions or onto the sofas, and dogs are more likely, because they sniff, to inhale them. And then of course these particles go into the lungs, and from the lungs they into the bloodstream pretty quickly and, you know, whiz around the body.
Yeah.
And some of them will enter into some cells and cause the cells to express themselves in an unhealthy way,
Differently. Okay.
because that's an environmental stressor. So, and then the
Really interesting.
epigenetic term is that the genes and the cellular expression
Are
is,
then altered.
yeah, exactly. So
Okay, really
it's worth
interesting.
bearing in mind. Things also, an environmental stressor is you've been outside, you've walked on the pavement, and you know, you've got dust and muck and nitrogen dioxide and carbon dioxide from traffic stuck. Prudence has now joined the Facebook.
Welcome, Prudence. Welcome, Prudence. She's more than welcome.
There we go. Now, yes, that's it. Now, there we are. So, now don't be a distraction. So dust particles, you know, will, as you trudge through the house, might get stuck in your carpet. There was a study done that analysed the amount of, you know, toxic nanoparticles in an average carpet, and it's quite a worrying amount. You know,
I'm sure.
dogs will sniff the floor, and these particles go up their nose. So it's, and do things, simple things like take your shoes off, you know, before you come in through the front door. I mean, Prue's had this funny little cough today, which, well, you know, they're always a worry.
They are.
They really are. They really are. But anyway, you're doing all right, aren't you, Prue? So yeah, so environmental stressors. I mean, one funny example I'll give you. So I moved to Buckinghamshire, right? I bought this cottage, and it had this carpet. So I ripped the carpet out and I put down this expensive engineered floor, right? And then I studied the section of my course with College of Integrated Veterinary Therapies that was all about the environment and environmental stressors. And I learned, to my horror, that of course engineered wood floor is full of glue, which is full of formaldehyde, which is really toxic. And I nearly passed out. So then I read a study as part of the section on these wood floors that was, if you get normal, just builder's tea bags, right? Not soaked, just dry, so your normal PG tips or whatever, and you just scatter them all around the floor and on your shelves, anywhere you can put them in the room with the floor, it will absorb the formaldehyde, volatile organic compounds. The black tea will absorb it by up to 85%. So when friends came around to visit, you can imagine, it was like, Anna, what's all this with these tea bags?
Random tea bags.
You know, so totally. So for example, that's something, again, I really don't want to.
And of course, you know, if you're thinking about that, you're thinking about, you know, how that would correlate to breeding terms. You've got mum who is living in an environment, and of course, obviously with breeding, we have to be very clean. You know, there are, you know, particularly for those of us that are licensed, there are chemicals that we are expected to use to keep our kennel block or our whelping box or wherever the puppies, the bitch and the puppies are, and the adult dogs for that matter, you know, need to be kept clean. And of course, dogs lick, dogs sniff. And then if she, for example, is in a whelping box laying on the floor, and we would wipe the whelping box down with a cloth with cleaning stuff on it, what you're saying is that she's going to inhale that, and the inhalation of that then, you know, goes through the dog's body, and then in epigenetic terms, which we're going to learn a bit more about on Tuesday evening, in epigenetic terms, that will then potentially alter the unborn puppies, who are then born and are then also in that environment, exploring, licking. Interesting. So even from the point of, say, for example, mum got out of the whelping box for a break and went and had a lay down on a floor that had been cleaned with a chemical, got back up and went and laid back down in the whelping box, those puppies could potentially be getting those chemicals directly from her teats.
Yeah, exactly is what I'm saying. Absolutely. And it's worrying because obviously, brain development with puppies happens very, very quickly. So from about 2 weeks of age, they're growing, they're absorbing, their cells are forming. So, for me, the easy option is to use plant-based products.
Okay. I was going to say, what's the solution? What's the
Exactly. There's
solution?
loads of solutions out there, to just use common sense, and to go for plant-based solutions. So Ecova is a kind of very sort of the poshest brand, but all of the supermarkets do their own. I can't remember Tesco's one off the top of my head, but I used to get that a lot. Method it's called. So there's a variety of cleaning products, and they all have the same effect. They're not weaker, or they're not less pokey at killing disease than bleach or the really, 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 chemical alternatives.
Okay, interesting. So, while we're on the very natural theme and vibe of the conversation, let's talk a little bit about nutrition. Now, I know that you are an advocate of raw feeding, and I know that not everybody who's listening will necessarily be people who feed raw particularly, but there will be lots of breeders that are and do, which is great. So from a nutritional perspective, within the group, we have lots and lots of questions about people that are feeding completes or breeders that are feeding completes, and they go off to their raw food shop, and the people that they are purchasing the raw food from don't always have a wealth of knowledge in terms of being able to advise on how to feed a pregnant bitch raw food. Feeding a bitch raw food is one thing, but feeding a pregnant bitch raw food is a different game entirely. And they're not always, necessarily very well versed in that, as they might not be about kibble in a pet shop. So, but while we're talking about raw, so if you were feeding a pregnant bitch and you were feeding them raw, what's your plan? How does that work? Explain to the breeders, what you would be doing and when and.
Absolutely. Well, so first of all, we've got to understand that, bitches, as are pregnant for about 9 weeks. Now, for the first 3 to 4 weeks of a pregnancy, what's recommended is to treat her totally normally. We've got to remember that pregnancy isn't an illness. It's a fantastic, brilliant, natural occurrence. Prudence, she's seen a bit of yak chew. Sorry, let's just put her down. Sorry about this. Okay, there we go. You can have that one. But you're actually Prudence. We're going to have the big one. I bought her one specially today. There. But of course, she doesn't want her new one. She wants the old one, which is too small. So pregnancy in bitches, it's not an illness. You want to keep your bitch in tip-top condition. I hate the word bitch, so can we say girl?
So we can say girl.
We want to keep the girl in the best condition. You want to keep her as fit as possible. You also don't want her to gain any weight unnecessarily, not at this point. She's going to be gaining weight as the puppies grow. I mean, this is, obviously nature. But so for me, to keep a dog in the best condition, as you said, I do advocate feeding a raw, balanced and complete diet. So assuming that your girl was on a raw, balanced and complete diet before she became pregnant, then there's no reason at all to change that, to keep her diet the same, but to be aware of keeping her food nutrient dense. But by the nature of raw, it is naturally nutrient dense, and I would go, of course.
So you don't increase the amount of food?
You do in the 5th week of the pregnancy. And in the 5th, so from the 5th week of the pregnancy to birth, you would expect that the bitch would put on about 25% of her body weight. So you are looking to up the energy requirements, so that, but not, to make her obese or anything, because that won't help in the birthing process and in helping her look after the puppies. But she should gain about 25% of her body weight. So you will be feeding her smaller portions, because her tummy is going to feel pretty full.
Space, yeah,
with the puppies. So feeding her smaller meals regularly through the day. I would suggest using things like Kongs, interactive feeders, so she's keeping mentally stimulated and active as well. You don't want her, lack of a better term, becoming a bit brain dead. You know, you
No,
want to
no.
keep mentally stimulated, keep the TV on, you know, walk her around the garden, let her do a little tricks if she knows some tricks, and you know, play some little games with her, but just do everything less and more often through the day, isn't it, Prudence? Exactly. So that's what I would recommend. Now, things that you should think about to feed her are, you know, oily fish. So lovely sardines, preferably organic, in spring water, a rich source of everything,
Yeah,
basically.
omega
Liver,
3s.
yeah, some liver that could be lightly sauteed using something like goat butter, for example. Um,
I quite like the sound of that myself. That sounds delicious.
Absolutely. You know, to look at the carbohydrates in her diet as well, because she is going to need sugar in her system. So it's not, you'd think, Anna, you're saying sugar. But she will need sugar in her system, so glucose, to synthesize to provide the lactose in the milk.
In the milk.
So
Okay.
to keep her carbohydrates, but you know, from a raw food perspective, carbohydrates, it doesn't really mean to me to think, great, we can feed refined kibble nuggets. Carbohydrates from a fresh feeding point of view means foods like spinach, like blueberries, like fennel is a lovely herb to offer a pregnant girl because it soothes the tummy, and she might be feeling a bit, she might feel tummy ache at
Yeah,
times, and
yeah.
obviously she can't say, you know, gosh, they're really kicking, they're really moving around, you know, and that
We often find around sort of day 30, 35, they get a bit of morning sickness. They get a bit, you know, just like we do. You know, the hormones are kicking in, the system's changing, everything's changing, and we do find that morning sickness can be a bit of a thing. So maybe that could help around that kind of time if you're raw feeding.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, you might want to experiment with some eggs, you know, preferably organic. You might think, you know, I love to give my dogs 2 raw eggs, literally crack them open into a bowl, mix up like you're going to make a cake or something, and present. And it's like a whole meal for dogs. It's got a beautiful balance of all the omegas, proteins, calcium in there. It's a real superfood. So a couple of eggs, but maybe if you're a bit nervous of feeding a raw egg, scramble it.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
Okay.
it's a nice, fairly light snack that's not super calorific, but it's super
Okay,
nutrient
super. And
dense.
so when we get to the
Yeah,
very, very end stages of pregnancy, the next kind of commonly asked questions is around bone content with raw, okay? Because we understand that calcium plays a very, very important part in the whelping, in terms of, you know, it is one of the 3 main ingredients for a good contraction for a start off after the puppies have been born. But you know, again, it's not always easy to find a complete that is, you know, boneless, and people get quite confused about when they should start to reduce down the bone content in order for the bitch to make the calcium herself. So can you talk to the breeders about that a little bit, please, Anna?
yeah. Well, I would recommend it's this week 5 as being kind of the key sort of trigger on that. You've got to remember that the complete raw meals contain a very small amount of ground up bone, and if your girl had been feeding raw previously, you know, you would expect that, you know, she would have the right
Good
balance in
balance. Okay.
and but I would err on the side of caution, and at that time, you know, perhaps prepare your own raw. You certainly, with a lot of the DIY, with a lot of the DIY, a lot of the good raw food firms at the moment, Paleo Ridge is one of these, they offer a DIY section on their website, so you can pick and mix.
What you want. Okay.
Exactly. So you can choose boneless minced lamb, boneless minced raw green tripe, and you know, also fish, which is also an interesting addition, perhaps because it's quite light. So if she's feeling a bit sicky running into pregnancy, you know, maybe to offer her some white fish, and to vary the proteins as well. So, you know, there's lots of options with the raw food firms, without a doubt. And these firms honestly are so helpful that they would, you know, go the extra mile to help you prepare something for her, you know. And often you find as well, or I've heard, that's Gremlin, my cat, clanking through the cat's lap. Sorry, Noah's Ark here. Often, bitches will go off what they used to like before they were.
Yes, we have it all the time. I can't get my bitch to eat. She doesn't want to eat anything. I have to hand feed her. She won't
hand
eat.
feeding's a great idea. So little tips like perhaps get some Manuka honey to rub around the gums, you know, because that's a very natural source of natural unrefined sugar. That might sort of get her appetite going. Think of stocking up on things like homemade bone broth. Really think, I would say, about keeping her moisture content up in food.
Hydration.
Remember that when she's giving the puppies milk is 78% water. So, you know, that's again why I would err to feeding a fresh, natural diet, even if it is slightly cooked, because a totally dry.
Gonna mean she's gonna drink, like,
obviously is dry. So, yeah, and really, you know, moisture coming from food is the natural way to supply the cells with water. So you really don't want to become dehydrated. And that's something else really to think about, why I would err to feeding a natural diet rather than an overly processed one. The water content.
Okay, so after you know, she's had the puppies and she's producing milk, is there anything at that point, nutritionally speaking, that she needs extra of because she's lactating?
Well, it's a lot more food, without doubt. A lactating bitch, like say for example, your dog's 10 kilos, just for easy mathematics. Okay, so their resting energy requirement is about 340 calories. So those are the amount of calories that a 10 kilo healthy dog would need just to keep their heart beating, you know, to keep the blood circulating around their body. That's so. If you're dieting a dog, you really want to look at what they would need for a resting energy requirement, basically, and you know, bring a diet back into line with that, slightly more, you know, depending on how
get it back to where it,
where they should be. Okay, that's what they need to survive and keep their brain functioning. So for a lactating bitch, you want that up to 8 times more. So that works out at about 2,750 calories.
Okay.
And being in the normal stage of her pregnancy, you only want that resting energy requirement to be multiplied by about 1.8. So you're really ramping it up a lot for this 4-week phase, when, you know, before the puppies go off and start to be weaned. Because their teeth are coming through, so the mother knows the time is getting. She's being bitten, she's being scratched more and more, she's feeling less comfortable about giving the puppies milk, you know, so, and that's when it takes a lot more work, because you've got to get the puppies off those teats.
You do. That's the difficult bit. So for you, that's the barometer, is it? You know, you I mean, I know that you're very, very naturally minded. So you're saying, you know, that's the natural time, the teeth are coming through, she's getting bitten, she's getting scratched. I mean, we do trim their nails, but nonetheless, you know, she's getting scratched. That's because one of my questions was, when do we start weaning the puppies? So we've got the puppies to like 4 weeks of age now. We've spoken about all of the different feeding cycles until that point, and now we've got to do 2 things, haven't we? We've got to start them on some food. At the same time, presumably we don't keep feeding mum up to 8 times the amount at that point.
Well, no, that's right. I mean, I think, you know, you've got to look at every individual. Some puppies are very reluctant to be weaned. But the reason most puppies do leave their mum at 8 weeks, you know, which isn't long after, really. I mean, 8 weeks, things happen very quickly. You know, brain development is so quick in dogs. You know, they're meant to be surviving in the wild, and the mothers, if say they were in the wild, needs to know that these puppies can fend for themselves quickly and be okay, you know, in case there's a predator around, you know. So what I would do is look at either, depending on how you're feeling about, you know, raw. Again, a lot of these firms, Benefit Natural, for example, I know Natural Instinct, I know Paleo Ridge, I'm not plugging, but just giving some examples who wants to Google, they make puppy weaning mix. So that's a raw, balanced and complete option that just arrives to your door already deep frozen. The only thing you need is a freezer, really, and then you thaw and serve. So for someone like me, that's really fabulous, because they've done the work for you. I mean, I think doing raw, you know, if you've not done raw before, it might be a bit scary, or it might be a bit, oh, am I doing it right? You know, are they going to get diarrhea? Is this going to be too much on their little digestive systems? But you have to remember, these are little carnivores. Their little sharp teeth are carnivorous teeth that are going to really enjoy having a chomp on a
Turn
little
on
teeth.
something meaty.
Yeah, and then for me, that for me is giving them the 110% nourishment, moisture into their system that's satisfying them. There's no overload of any sugar to, you know, give them the zoomies, and really to set. You see, the point is as well, feeding puppies at that age, you're feeding their immune system.
Yeah.
So to feed food that is going to enhance and nourish the immune system, for me, is kind of top priority. Whereas other foods arguably might be feeding the immune system, but arguably perhaps a bit more as an environmental stressor. So maybe not feeding the immune system to its maximum capacity because the foods aren't totally species appropriate and they've been extremely processed. So the molecular structure of the food has been altered so that it's not 110% unadulterated good stuff, basically, a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
rub
yeah.
to nourish those pups and really give them the best start in life. And arguably make them less, you know, needing to suckle on the teats, you
Yeah,
know, because
yeah,
they
yeah.
get
If they're more satisfied.
satisfied and they're calm because, you know, this food isn't creating sugar highs. That's
Okay.
my sort of main thing. But, you know, alternatively, you can cook. What about, you know, getting some good organic chicken? You know, you can roast it so it gets all the nourishment from the bones. You could, if you've been organized, you know, while you were making all your bone broth, taking the roast chicken, freezing it, bringing it out for the time when the weaning was going to be happening. So it's only in the freezer for about a month, pulverizing it into like baby food texture and serving it to the puppies like that, adding a little bit of water so that it's, you know, not too of a dry
Not too
consistency.
dry. Okay.
And that's something that I know Prue at my bull terrier, because I really research Prue's breeder. You know, she's from Germany,
Yeah.
for instance, and yeah, so Prue was eating all sorts of things. When I went to visit her at 5 weeks, she was eating this like kind of German meatloaf. She was also having homemade chicken mulch, baby food like that. She was also having some raw. So her breeder made sure that she had little bits of everything.
Variation.
Different types. She was also having a little bit of air dried food because that's quite big in Germany,
Okay.
so that her immune system was, you know, receiving different nutrients in a different form. I was a bit cross about that. I remember we had a bit of a debate. I said, but you know, Prue's just going to be going to raw, so you know, I'm not happy about her having this or that. You know what I mean? She said, Anna, she's one of my litter. I have to prepare the puppies for their future.
For all eventualities.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And her outlook was to make their immune systems as robust as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because, you know, and we all come across this, you know, what people do with the puppies when they leave us, especially regarding feeding, you know, it is a bit of a debate for us breeders, because we can't dictate to people. You know, I remember selling a puppy to a family who were vegan.
Really?
And they just were not going to have it. They just were not going to have any conversations around. I mean, forget about feeding raw. I'm talking about giving the dog a bone, like the old thing, dogs eat bones. Not sure if anybody's heard of that, might blow your mind. But, you know, and they just weren't having it. They were just like, not my dog. And so what there's only so much you can do. So I think, you know, Prudence's breeder has actually got a lot of foresight there in recognizing that she needs to set them up for success in the round, isn't it? So no, that's really good, really good advice. Right, I'm gonna have a little look at some questions that I've got in the chat. Let's have a little zoom around. So June is just referring back to the flea treatments and the cleaning products. It's particularly regarding licensing, which I know you're not going to drill down into the whys and wherefores of licenses, but is there an alternative flea treatment, particularly because I know we spoke about some alternative cleaning products for floors? Is there an alternative flea treatment that we can use if we didn't want to put that amount of chemical on?
Well, the thing is, so in my study, what's drilled into us with wormers, for example, as well, is that you do this thing, this test before you treat. So if your dog hasn't got fleas, then really, do you need to give them a flea treatment? Just an out there question. Same with worms. If you've tested and your dogs have no worms, I do this thing called the worm count test with my dogs every 3 months, which is a little bit messy because what you have to do is scoop 3 little scoops of 3 days consecutive poo, right? And you store it in a little pot with a lid in the fridge. I know it sounds totally gross, but
it's okay. We do poo. It's fine. We're breeders. We do poo. It's
anyway,
cool.
right? So, you know, and then you send it off back to the laboratory and then they email you back. And look, you know, I've been doing this for years. My dogs have never had worms ever. So it does make, you know, it's just food for thought. I'm not, you know,
no.
anything. So, yeah, so, and they test for lungworm as well. So if there are no worms there, it begs the question, well, why am I putting a wormer either top on or, you know, getting them to, you know, swallow a tablet? So similarly, you know, that goes with fleas. Now, in the last part of the bitch's pregnancy, she won't have been going to the park as much as she was at the beginning of her pregnancy, because she'll be finding it a little bit harder to move around and so on. So I would say, if you live with a cat that's an outdoor cat, there is indeed a possibility that that outdoor cat could bring fleas in, typically at the wrong time, because 80% of the world's fleas are cat fleas, and cat fleas are the only species of flea that are quite happy to live on a human, on a horse, on a dog, or a hedgehog, whereas hedgehog fleas, Prudence, you won't have this, hedgehog fleas will only live on a hedgehog. They might jump on a dog if a dog finds a hedgehog for about 5 minutes, but they'll realise, yeah, exactly. Oh my God, your dog. Yeah, your dog. I need hedgehog. So, so you know, people that live with cats, yeah, maybe think about it. You know, my cat takes the odd spot on. He had one recently because the weather's been so mild, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
And so on. So it's great flea sprouting weather, and he's an outdoor cat.
Okay.
So, you know, he hopped off.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what I would say there. So, but it's about preventing. So you can use essential oils. There are loads of products on the market that offer sprays, you know, to deter fleas from jumping on in the first place.
Interesting. And June is also asking the question regarding the use of chemicals, about steam treatments. She's saying, can you use a steamer, and steam treatments, are they effective instead of any kind of chemical?
Steam treatment's really good. So yes, you've got those floor, you know, I used to have one for my wood floors. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah. That's fine. It's water, and you know, yeah, absolutely. So that's great.
Great, fantastic. Okay, I have a comment from Susan Wise. She says that she weans her puppies with full fat goat's milk, and her adults love it. What are your thoughts on full fat goat's milk for pups?
Love that fat's been brought up. Absolutely love that, because fat is nutrient rich for dogs. You know, I often say to people, you've got to remember, dogs thrive on animal fat and animal protein. Okay, so butter is just that, animal fat and animal protein. We eat a lot of butter in this house. I love it. And sometimes I will, you know, just put a little butter on the edge of a Kong and roll it along, and it's a lovely treat. Now, bitches can, lactating bitches need about 5 times the amount of fat than she would have needed before she was pregnant. So to use foods like full fat goat's milk, brilliant, full fat goat butter, sheep, using dairy that isn't cow, because can be over farmed and industrialized and can cause lactose intolerances in some dogs. Not all dogs. If she was fine on cow dairy before she was pregnant, you know, providing it's organic, then that's okay. But sheep and goat are really good options. There's more novel protein solutions where dairy is concerned.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. I've got a question. I can't see who it's from. I can't see the name of who it's from. But it says it's a fan of a particular working dog food. It's an oily grain-based feed. What is your view on non or less meaty or more grain-based feed for dogs, particularly pregnant girls? So I guess that question is around grain, basically.
Grain, yeah. So you know, for me, it's not my choice really. You know, I don't really, you know, like food that's turned up in a bag. Again, I like to feed as nature intended on a species appropriate diet before she became pregnant, you know, all her life. So you know, so you're not asking the right person. I would say probably not. Look at the ingredients if it's in a bag, and just look at the ingredients. Be absolutely honest with yourself and think, look, should my dog be eating barley? Should my dog be eating maize or corn or rice? You know, dogs, yeah, presented with these foods and you know, in experiments, in studies, they will, so dogs are presented with bowls of kibble and bowls of meat. Okay, guess which ones they will choose naturally themselves to eat? Bowls of meat. So I mean, in my latest podcast that's aired today, little plug on my podcast, The Dog's Life with Anna Webb, got to get that in, haven't I? Because I always,
of course, go for it.
I'm actually talking to Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib about their book, The Forever Dog.
The Forever Dog, yeah.
Really is worth getting. So I just can't recommend it enough. We all want our dogs to live for as long as possible. And in this book, they've trawled the world to get the latest science from everywhere, from Italy, Finland, from the UK, from Australia, absolutely everywhere. On the interrelationship between food and the gut, and the gut being the second brain. So that goes back to when you're weaning puppies, you really want their gut to be activated with the good bacteria that is found in raw and that is natural for a dog, and it's acidic gut to have in there to keep it working properly. Allow the food to be bioavailable to go through the stomach lining and then help the cells grow. Whereas, you know, our stomachs are terribly alkaline, so we're omnivores, so we can eat lentils and beans till the cows come home, literally, and thrive on that. But dogs are carnivores. So anyway, so just look at the ingredients, see what it says on the back of the packet, and just buy the Forever Dog. It's actually up next to the bed, but I've been running this National Breeder Convention and I've not had 5 minutes to read it. I'll get to it. While we're talking about the gut and the microbiome, this is a topic that really fascinates me. For anybody who thinks I'm talking Chinese and doesn't know what on earth I'm going on about, the microbiome is when the gut, human or canine, is working at its optimum. And there's been lots of studies done to do with how, if your gut is working at its optimum, your brain, just like Anna said, you know, your gut is your second brain. So in terms of puppy development, presumably that correlates directly to puppies being happy and trainable. So, you know, when we are talking to our owners and that they may be experiencing problems with puppies at home, puppies not settling well or not training well, or seems to be irritable, lots of zoomies, biting, frustration kind of behaviors that we do receive feedback on, we all do. Can we would you be linking that straight away to nutrition? I mean, I do. One of the first things I say is, what was the puppy eating? Can we, you know, absolutely. In fact, I wrote a blog actually for Paleo Ridge just last week that looks into that, you know, because foods like kibble are very high glycemic. I mean, you'll have sugar highs. We get to 5 o'clock and we've still got some emails to write or whatever it might be, and you reach for the chocolate biscuits and you get busy typing again and you feel all
I drove home from London last night having downed a whole packet of mint Imperials. I was like, right, let's go.
Yeah, brilliant, exactly. I bet absolutely brilliant. So, but then what happens is, that sugar dissolves very quickly into your bloodstream. So you get a very quick sugar hit and you feel brilliant. But then the problem is when that wears off, you sink down, you get moody, you get crabby, or you crave another Imperial mint, but they've all gone. Oh no. And you're a bit distracted. You can't seem to focus properly. All of these conditions are seen a lot in puppies that eat a very highly processed diet. Compare that to a raw balanced complete option, which has no refined sugars in it, has a little bit of carbohydrate. We need a little bit, but we're talking about functional carbohydrates, which are raw, very finely ground down vegetables or fruits or botanicals. So nothing like a bit of processed bread, which is tantamount to what a lot of these processed grain-based foods are really.
Okay.
So, the behavior can be affected.
So the behavior is linked. Because we see this a lot, and I'll say to my owners, typically they have remained on the food that I've weaned the puppy onto. So typically it isn't a change in actual diet. Quite often they're very, very inspired about having their new puppy and they're really into training, and they go and buy some really cheap treats for their puppies. And these cheap treats that they've got off the shelf in the supermarket are full of colorings and additives, and the puppies think they're great. And of course they learn to sit in 2 seconds flat, because it's like giving a child a bag of Imperial mints. But half an hour later, the puppy's getting naggy and bitey and frustrated, and they're experiencing those problems. So I personally see a link there, and it's really interesting that you go there. Right.
A minute as well, Rebecca. What with a lot of puppies have been taken on in lockdown, and now they're teenagers, and people have sort of given up. We've tried got the puppy face and everything, and they may not have attributed the dog's moody behaviour or its excessive biting to the food it was eating. You see, so I think an awareness of that for good ethical breeders wanting their puppies to go to their forever homes. I know, I was screamed about getting Prudence. So, everyone wants that puppy that's taken a lot of time, energy and commitment
to
raise for 8 to 9 weeks, sometimes.
Definitely.
And I would also say at this point, to encourage interaction between the puppies and the mother as much as possible. I've seen how much puppies can learn from their mother, and mothers are quite bossy with their puppies actually. And it's great for them, to learn basic manners really at that early kind of almost subconscious level, even from the suckling level on the milk bar really. You'll always have your big porky puppy, won't you, that's been
always.
And then you'll get the skinny one that's been struggling. So, and the mum does try to balance it out actually.
No, it just fascinates me. Right, I've got a question from Lynn Harvey. She says, have you ever heard of natural flea treatments like Billy No Mates? Is that something? Is that any good?
Yeah, I've used it. That features an ingredient called neem oil, which, to be honest with you, it smells like, I don't know, stinky old socks. Put it this way, it makes raw green tripe smell fantastic.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, neem oil. But yes, it's basically a deterrent. Fleas and any biting bugs can't bear it. And it's a liquid that you measure very carefully and pop it into your dog's food.
Fantastic. In the food? Okay.
In food, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, right. Next question.
You want to be careful with, in the last few weeks of pregnancy, maybe check to the manufacturer, what do they recommend with neem oil, that sort, because it will be going into her system.
Yeah, okay. Really interesting. Well, anything on that note, guys, if we are talking about anything going on or in your dog, don't forget that you can look at Noah's Compendium. So you just would go into Google, www.noahscompendium.com. It might be .co.uk actually, but either way, it's Noah's Compendium, and you can put in the product name of anything that is for sale on the shelf in the UK. It will be in there. And if you look into the contraindicators, it will tell you if it's safe or not to use on a pregnant and lactating bitch. So we would advise that whatever you put on your bitch, wherever you buy it from, please look on that first before you give it to your dog. It's an industry thing, everybody uses it, and if you don't know about it, it's a really great resource. So Emily is saying, what is better, fresh goat's milk or puppy formula during weaning?
Gosh, well, I'm not sure what's in a puppy formula off the top of my head. I don't know. Rebecca, what's that? Is it powder that you add water to?
There's different types. There is puppy milk,
Right.
Made puppy milk. It's made.
Right.
And there are powders that you can have. There are a couple of the big food manufacturers make powders that you can mix up, usually with water, to feed puppies. And you have it. There's colostrum and there's milk replacer, and then there are weaning products of the same varieties, really.
See, I would think, getting them onto meat as soon as possible, because remember, they've got their little teeth, like a sloppy baby mixture would be my preferred idea. But to answer the question, more and more friends of mine who have bred litters, they would go for the natural option.
The natural options.
Yeah, I mean, where colostrum's concerned, I know I give all of my cat and Prue and Mr. Binks some colostrum every other day, and it's from a Swiss supplier actually, called Quia Vera in Switzerland, and it's raw, unpasteurized, freeze-dried colostrum. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but I saw with Molly, my first miniature bull terrier, how it turned her health around in days.
Okay.
And yeah, reverse.
That's really interesting. I've learned something there that I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. So I can make that link available to people. Yeah, so
definitely.
It's very strong, and it's unpasteurized being the key bit, because if colostrum's been pasteurized, it means it's been boiled,
and it's gone.
Nutrition is going to be so depleted. So yes, that's my little secret product.
So that could be really, really useful for puppies, because in an ideal world, mum would be with pups until and be interacting with them, certainly feeding them for as long as possible, even if it's 1 or 2 feeds a day, to keep the antibodies going into them. But some of us do find ourselves with dogs who get bored of their puppies and don't want to be with them. They want to go off and do other stuff, and they've had enough. Like I've got a working breed here, and quite often 2 weeks in, they're quite happy to lay with their puppies, but they also know when it's walkies time, and they also want to go back out and do scent work and do all the fun things that we do. And they're like, yes, sod them, they'll be all right, they'll be here when I get back, I'm off out with you. So and I do worry sometimes that means that they're missing a feed, and that they may be missing out on some nutrients that they wouldn't have. And it's that fine balance between keeping mum and pups happy. But presumably you could use that, obviously not in 2-week-old puppies, but you could use that as they're getting older as part of the weaning process. If you were worried that mum wasn't quite cutting the mustard, maybe that is a product that would be useful for breeders to make sure that their puppies are getting all of the antibodies.
Absolutely, no, certainly. And I know they'd be more than happy to answer lots of questions.
There's super
science on their website. They do sheep, and they do organic cow, and they do goat. It's a family-run firm. I'm not gaining anything.
No. I just think I didn't even know it was a thing.
They just started out in about 2012. That's when I first found the products. It was when I was doing my study, and one of my tutors, Barbara Fougere, I explained what was wrong with Molly, and she said, right, you either go colostrum or you go traditional Chinese medicine, Anna. So at that point, I actually wasn't sure what colostrum was. I had to Google it. I mean, how blonde. So I thought, oh my God, yes, we need colostrum. But then, because I learned about processing, I got various colostrums. They were all pasteurized. So I was going, no, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. So anyway, came across this firm in Switzerland, and we're just friends, and I still order from them, and I've recommended the product to a lot of my clients, and it's great at just keeping wellness, just keeping your immune system. So for an old dog, you want to make sure that their immune system's ticking at 110%.
Yeah.
So and my cat has one capsule every day because he's out and about, you know. So Jack the lad. So
Keep
there
him
we
safe.
go. There we go. We've done
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, well, listen, we've taken up more than enough of your time, and it has been absolutely wonderful speaking to you. I'm sure everybody has gleaned loads of information from this evening, and it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Anna. It's been really great.
Rebecca, thank you. And Prudence is now calm. Typically at the end, she's now on the correct yak chew. So hurrah. But never mind. Next time, oh, you're back. Next time, hopefully, she'll be in her bed and be a bit calmer. So thank you for listening, everybody. And any questions, please get in touch.
Definitely. Anna has a website, so if you have some questions, anything that you would like to speak to her about directly, if you Google Anna Webb, her website comes straight up, and you can get in contact with her. Obviously, she is a raft of knowledge on this stuff, and for those of you that would like to dive a little deeper, she is your lady. Guys, it has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I will see you, well, I will actually see you tomorrow morning, but I wasn't going to tell you that, but I will be live in the morning briefly, and I will be live again tomorrow evening with our next guest, Rebecca McPartland from Shropshire Canine, who will be with us talking about cytology for detecting ovulation in bitches. So I will see you all tomorrow evening.